Hi, Tamara.
Hey,
All
Paul.
right, well, how you doing? I'm in
Good.
England and you're in the East Coast. I'm doing
That's
very well,
right.
thank you very much. Yeah. I want to just talk, well, great that we're all here. Congratulations, first of all. Not
Thank
that I
you.
haven't congratulated you already, but I just want to ask you, might as well start at the beginning. You've worked with Guillermo before. Please go back to the beginning. It's a long way back, right? So start when you first
Yeah.
worked with him.
I guess it was 1995 or 96, and it was on Mimic when I was working with the amazing Carol Spear and
Right.
art directing. And yeah, and this crazy youngish, I mean, we were all a lot younger then, director came into our lives. And I immediately felt a synchronicity with Guillermo. There were just certain motifs and styles and attention to detail that I really appreciated and respected as an art director.
And then, okay, so that that's the very, very beginning. Then you worked with him. What have you worked with him since then? Quite a lot
Then
of
I
things
did,
as well. So,
yeah, I did the strain after that for about 4 years, which was pretty intense. And he was the writer, creator, and executive producer that on that. And then one day he called me into his trailer and I was working on Star Trek Discovery, and he said, "Come and work with me." And I said, "Sure, on what, Guillermo?" And he was like, "Well, I got this." And he described all these different projects. I think somewhere in there was Nightmare Alley, and somewhere in there may have been Frankenstein. And so this was after you worked with him on Shape of Water. And so I said, sure. I was kind of ready to move on. So the next thing I did with him was Nightmare Alley. And then I guess I did Cabinet of Curiosities, and then we did Frankenstein.
excellent. And so, okay, so we'll get it. This is what we're talking about anyway, Frankenstein. And obviously, it's a book set in the, what, 1815,
Early
1817,
1800s,
something like
yeah,
that. And
1817,
then,
but Guillermo pushed it a little bit later, which had advantages for us. The start of electricity, it was made some of the fantastical elements of Frankenstein's lab and world a little more believable and historically grounded,
yeah, right.
if
Okay,
you
well,
can say
and
that.
Guillermo loves the Victorian era, obviously. I mean,
Mhm.
he's got quite a few, he loves that Victorian Gothic, so that kind of makes sense. Um, and then I guess then what happened? I mean, you had to scout, you had to figure out where you're going to make this thing. I mean, at the beginning of any film, I mean, I don't know, not all films, but often we're in pretty early. We get to talk to the producers and the director and figure out where is best suited to
Yeah.
find the locations or build the kind of things that are required in the script that you're given. I mean, we read the script and we figure out how we're going to make this thing, and
Mhm.
so this thing is set obviously in the UK and Scotland, I guess. But I'm sure that wasn't the first port of call. I mean, what happened?
No.
Give us the rundown of what might have happened at the beginning for people who
I
wouldn't
mean,
know quite what.
I think, I'm lucky in that Guillermo knows to bring on his keys early enough that you can really start to formulate. And so on Frankenstein, he actually brought me on while he was still writing the screenplay. He had a pretty thorough outline and about two-thirds of it written. And I started in January part-time, which means for most people double full-time, except for
Yeah.
us in the film industry. And what I was doing, I was actually in Cape Breton at the time and working remotely and just looking at locations. So we had scouts all across Europe, you know, Czech Republic, Hungary, Austria, Switzerland, where part of the story takes place, all throughout the UK, Ireland, and I was just going through all these photos because it was a massive job and starting to break down just the logistics at the same time of, okay, what do we have to build? Do we have to build the ship? And of course, the producers were like, well, can we find a ship? No, we couldn't
Yeah,
find a
yeah,
ship.
exactly.
We did
No.
look though, there
Yeah.
was actually a ship in South Africa, I believe, that's a film ship on a lot, but it was completely
I've seen
wrong.
it. I've seen it, and it would
Yeah,
not have been. It was
it's the
completely
wrong
wrong.
period. Yeah, I
I think
looked
it's
at
a
it for,
kids. I think it's a kids thing with a giant. Well,
yeah.
currently there's a couple of ships. One of them has a giant dog on it, and one of them has something else. I don't know the
Right.
television
Not an
show that was on. I
Arctic
mean, it's
exploration
no,
vessel.
no,
Anyway,
no.
so I spent like weeks doing that. And then I sort of narrowed it down, with Miles Dale, our producer, of what to show Guillermo. And we kind of fast tracked it that it was best we were going to already be all over the place in Scotland. And as it was, we were all over the place in Scotland and outside of London. So we narrowed it down to that. And I think that was part, like, even though part of the story is at Lake Como in Italy and in Switzerland, the Swiss Alps and in the Arctic. So we narrowed it down to mostly Scotland for our away shooting. And then I think my first time really spent with Guillermo was there was a little bit in LA of prep with Guy Davis, who's our
Hmm.
amazing hero
I
concept
know,
artist
guy.
that
Yep.
yeah, yeah, of course you do. I mean, he has a way of getting in Guillermo's brain, and so he'd already started doing some concepts long before I started that were just vibe and stuff to show the network, the studios, to sell the product, as a good representation of what's in Guillermo's head. But then the four of us with Miles Dale, our producer, the first time I had time with Guillermo was actually going to Scotland. And it was through that we really started looking at things. And, when we were in Scotland, we were looking at the Wallace Tower and all the other monuments that are there and kind of Guillermo was forming the movie in his mind. So
Right.
it was, yeah, I don't want to
Organic,
say
I guess.
organic, but
Yeah.
it was very fluid that we were able to be where we wanted to shoot. And some places we looked at that we just used for references. There was like Hatfield House. We didn't shoot there, but I stole an area with tile floor. And, there were lots of instances of that. So that was really the start of our creative flow.
And obviously, how did you decide, you know, what order, like what was the order? I mean, I think you had some miniature unit as well, did you not? Like, so, I mean, I remember you brought me to the set numerous times over the course of the build. And
Mhm.
then I think you went off before the before the UK shoot, you actually had a window where you were prepping, I guess, the UK shoot. And also there was I think was there a miniature shoot or something?
Yeah,
Was that
there was about a 2 week miniature shoot. So they built 1:20 scale of the full tower. So we designed the tower and we built the base of the tower where the action is. We built the interior lobby. There was actually 8 sets to the whole lab tower altogether on location and mostly in the studio. And the miniature guys started. I guess they started like once we were underway building the tower. Um, Magic Camera in Shepperton.
hmm Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so we shot all the Canadian stuff, which was the bulk of the movie. I would say 80% of it was shot in studio and up north at Lake Nipissing posing as the
Oh
Arctic,
yes, that's right. That's right.
which was sort of in pre-production on the semi-frozen lake. And then they shot the miniatures while we prepped the rest of the UK shoot in like the fall of that year that we were shooting,
And then I
2024.
guess so all right. So you did a bunch of I mean we skipped the research part. I'm sure you did a lot of that before you even went to Scotland
Yeah,
originally.
I should have said that. So when I started doing
Yeah.
locations, there were two parts to my world. One was intense locations and one was intense research. And the research
Yeah.
was, for me, it was a big dive into a lot of things that I really didn't know about Victorian era, the science and the medical, practices of that time. An Arctic exploration ship, even though as a young art student, I actually worked for wooden boat builders. So it was
Oh,
my love of ships comes from way back then. But I did, so at that time I was also going to, because I was here in Halifax, I was going to look at meet with the curators at the Halifax Maritime Museum. And then when we started going to the UK, every ship I could get access to that was around the
right.
period. The
Yeah.
Cutty Sark, there's a
Yeah.
Glendale in Glasgow. There's a number of ships that I made a point of visiting and just photographing every aspect of them. And then
I
going
mean,
back again with Shane, our decorator in the art department in the UK.
and also, I mean, I'm obviously tied with the research you did from Canada when you were here. I'm sure there's there's such great resources. You must have gone to all kinds of museums of things, the Maritime Museum perhaps in Greenwich or Steam Museum. I mean, there must be some museum that you must have loved. What was your favorite museum here that you
You
must have
know,
done some research in?
it here in Canada.
No, no, here, I'm sorry. Here,
Oh,
I'm in
you're
England.
right
Sorry,
here.
here.
Okay, I was like,
Yeah, yeah, I'm
oh,
in
right.
England. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
here in England.
So, the Crossness Pumping Station, Paul, is this crazy, is actually a abandoned water facility. And
Okay.
they've actually shot movies there, and it's Victorian era, and it's next to an active sewage facility.
Treatment
So
plant.
it
Yeah.
stinks all to
Stinks.
hell. It's actually, you can only, you have to book it, and you can only, go with a guide. And there's a toxic area just next to it, which is the working sewage system
Right.
of London. But we went there, and it's funny because another Frankenstein movie, the one with Daniel Radcliffe, I can't remember exactly what it's called, but they actually shot in there, and it was actually Guillermo who brought the picture of the Crossness pumping station. It had this elaborate mezzanine, Victorian cast iron mezzanine that is beautiful to see, and we started to design that within the lab. We had our earlier renditions had this whole mezzanine level, and Guy was drawing it in concepts, and then Soren Popescu, our set designer, I were modeling it. But we got rid of it because it was just getting too busy in the lab to have, we had to break it all away and simplify it. But I can talk about that later. Anyways, the Crossness pumping station, I literally, like, some of the stuff in there, the windows, I literally stole. They had these,
Perfect.
because they had the circle motif that Guillermo loves in these upper part of these windows. But it was funny, there was another Frankenstein movie in there, but it was just a great, just the textures and these big machine parts and the steam engines that we had to build for the lab it was great research walking through the spiral staircase,
Spiral staircase. It's all
totally
tiled.
ripped
It's
off
probably
of
all
that.
tiled as well, right? I mean,
A
it's
lot
probably
of
like a beautiful tile
tile,
work in there.
a lot of brickwork, a lot of big cast iron stuff. I mean, just amazing. If you get a chance, it's fun to go see.
Yeah,
They
I
have a
mean, the
little
Victorians were
museum to
very,
it.
very industrious. The Victorians, and they had
Very.
I think they had the wealth of the empire at the time to do
Yeah.
all these things. So, I mean, I guess that's why there's so many beautiful things to see from that era.
But that was
I mean,
probably
and
the
that
most
was probably the
unique
most
museum.
influential
Yeah.
one. Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, and then like I know any period movie, but working with Guillermo too during Shape of Water, we did endless research from the '60s because his movies aren't documentaries; they're not
No.
real. I mean, they're not reality, I should say. We're not trying to replicate an exact thing that happened. So where do you have the conversations with him about where you break from reality? I mean, I know usually when I do it, it's nice to, if you're doing something fantastical but set in a time period, you want to do as much as you can to provide the feeling of that time period, and then at some point you have to break out into the fantasy. But the fantasy seems to be more vetted and more real if you get the
Yeah.
full surroundings to be most accurate. So I'm just wondering, was there discussions about when you could break from reality? I think I want to ask you eventually when we get to the lab about the batteries, for instance. I mean, they're
Yeah.
ginormous. I mean, I'm assuming those batteries were never that big, but I mean, they look epic in that space. So I'm just wondering, where, how this conversation might have happened with when you're working with him on this.
It's interesting. I don't really talk so much with Guillermo about, like, my love and my passion and my strength, I think, is drawing from the historic realities of the time. And I think both Shane and I try to pull out what is real, what would be viable, could this exist. So when we came to do the battery towers, which Guy Davis had done the concept of, and his initial concept, they would have been like 300 feet tall. The way Guy
Right.
drew them
Well,
out,
they
it's
could
like,
have
oh
filled
my
the, they
God.
could have filled the tower. Yeah, exactly. The whole tower
In the
inside.
end, they were, I think, 16 feet tall, but and very complicated to build. We actually had to
They looked
rebuild.
very
Like,
complicated.
they were, the guys had to, like, take MDF and make it rounded like copper. But, like, I think what the compliment between Guillermo and myself, is because I'm so historically obsessed and grounded, and he pushes the fantastical. I think
Yeah.
we find the
The
right
balance.
tone, the balance that
Yeah.
then makes the audience go, oh, I can suspend my disbelief. I believe this is real because, I think the art department has put the work into making it real, but it's fantastical at the same time. And it really is, it's dancing that line between the two. And Guillermo, with the Arctic ship, he was like, just, make me a ship and make it good and make it real. Cause he wanted that to be, more vested in what a real Arctic ship would be. So I went to like the Franklin expedition with the Terror and the Airbus and used a lot of that actual, imagery, these incredible paintings by Stanley Owen, uh, who was on on those expeditions, did these incredible watercolors. So we used a lot of that. But yeah, the battery towers. I wanted to make the glass, the green glass that then
Yeah,
glows red, and make it feel like it was that really thick glass of the
it,
period.
it looked like
Yeah,
crazy hand blown
so
glass. Yeah.
lot of R&R for Mark Kuhnbauer, our construction coordinator, a whole team. Like we had to figure that out, and they had to roll, so the whole thing was on rolling wheels and doing the copper finishes and stuff. So we started those months and months before they ever had to be
Well, and they look like
finished.
they have liquid in them as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
and obviously they wouldn't have had liquid in them that
No, and
size. I
they
mean,
they had to
no,
have lights in them. They had to have
yeah.
special effects smoke in them, special effects steam in them, dry ice in them. So they were like, it was an interdepartmental nightmare. Thank God for Brant Gordon, who's very good at managing our supervising art director, all the different departments to make us come together and still get the look that we wanted. But yeah, they were
I
pretty incredible.
mean, maybe I'll jump back to that, but maybe I'll start at the beginning of the film. You already brought up the ship. Um, graciously you took me to most of these sets anyway, and it was huge, epic size, and I don't think people realize how big these things are. A long time ago, I did like the front two prows of a 17th century ship in Germany, and the bowsprits are like 35 feet long. They're
Massive.
enormous, and the carvings are way bigger than you ever think. And the height, ours was an airship, I guess. So you'd see from the bottom of the keel to the deck. It was so huge. And this one is buried in ice. It's massive. And we climbed on top, and it's on a. You have to explain to people. I mean, it was on a
Yeah.
massive gimbal, and I was looking at your drawings showing how much steel is, or I guess those are the engineering drawings, but the amount of steel and the amount of tilt on it seemed pretty crazy too. I mean, I think when we walked up, you told me it was something like, I don't know, 7.5 degrees or something, and I remember thinking how steep that was, and couldn't imagine rocking that whole unit back and forth. So, how did that all
Yeah.
happen? I mean, what made it be? I mean, I suppose there could have been just a small bit tilting, or I don't know what, but I mean, it's pretty amazing that you guys did it for real. I'm just curious to know what
I mean,
guided that or what steered it
yeah.
to that.
I mean, that was very much Guillermo wanted everything to be very handmade and hand built,
Right.
not faked,
Real. Yeah.
not a VFX ship that, I mean, VFX did do work on it. We only built the mast part way.
Yes.
If you look at the making of or see photos of it, but and they did a beautiful job of continuing the ice. But the ship, we had to be very specific with Guillermo. So we did animatics, we did three different physical models to show the tilt of the ship
Right.
and decide together exactly. I think it was 12 degrees overall or something, and that the ship was always tilted slightly, which was very disarming when you're on
It was
it.
discombobulating. Yeah.
And so we were working very closely with our special effects team to engineer it. It had to be safe, and there was a giant gimbal under there. Um, and then I there were things that happened like that. We ended up. I went up there when the stuntmen were practicing the gimbal for the first time, and I was like, we just had two by fours over these openings, and that's when I was like, okay, there's got to be like a net or something that looks period. So I'm doodling a net on my iPad, and I went to we had a sailor, Jim Dines, he does a lot of boats for movies. Came over from the UK. I'm like, Jim, can we do this? Like, I'm so worried somebody's going to fall off this ship. So, it was like a lot of learning as we went along, and developing, the design and adding the ice. And then, I would sketch out ice and then show Guillermo, like, do we want more ice? And then working with Kate Hawley,
I'm
our
sure he
costume
wanted
designer.
more. I'm sure he wanted more.
Always.
He
And
always
but I'm
wants more.
like that. I'm the
Always.
same. That I'm the
Yeah.
same way. So, and then working with Kate Hawley, because she had very like specific, all the sailors had
Yeah. They
very,
had
they
frost
had
on
this
beards and frost on
frost on
everything.
their
Yeah.
costumes and on their hair and makeup. And they did an amazing job, but that was all like carefully orchestrated to work together. So, we were photographing the sailors in their frosty outfits in front of the ship and kind of getting the levels just right. snow tests. I'm just the ice research
Yeah.
alone. I have to say, on Frankenstein,
Well,
I learned more about different types of ice and what ice is doing. And then, Guillermo would come in with a painting of Caspar David Friedrich. There was one ice painting that he has that it was big in our research because Guillermo just loved the shape of it. And we actually replicated that ice with these 16-foot high icebergs, some of them that we were building.
yeah, they were. I mean, honestly, I was going to ask you about the ice because I remember once having to like entertain a script that had an ice cave, and I was kind of terrified about how it actually have to create an ice cave, So I'd be curious to know because I did see the big ice forms, and I was just wondering you know, how did you get it? I think one of them was even clear, like you could sort of see through the sunset through it
Yeah.
when I was there. So I'm just wondering
Well,
because it's pretty fascinating. There's many ways to do it, I suppose, but I'm curious how you guys. What was the process in the end for that one? Because it was
Well, we did
interesting.
do a lot of R&R with our amazing sculpting and scenic team. They were fantastic, and Guillermo actually asked for something that doesn't really exist in nature, but okay, I
Uh-huh.
was like, I'm going to go there. He wanted I call it an ice cream sandwich. So he wanted the clear ice in the middle, and then solid on either
Oh yeah,
side,
the
so that
frosty white.
so it
Yes.
catch the light and do all. So
Yeah.
we experiment. We found a way to melt the sort of the middle, and then sandwich the styrofoam on either side of these giant icebergs. I mean, the things are like 2 feet thick. So when I'm going, like, some of them were really,
Yeah.
really thick, and then carved the styrofoam, but had this melted clear in the middle, and they were just massive. We had an entire studio that we didn't have sets in yet, but we were using it just to carve the
The
iceberg.
ice
And there's
studio. Yeah, it
pictures
would
of
have
it.
been
Just
a lot of mess and styrofoam bits,
a
I'm sure, in
lot of
there too.
mess. A lot of people going home with little tiny bits of styrofoam all over their houses, I imagine, for weeks. Anyways,
It's like snow dressing appears everywhere
rock on,
in your
scenic
house
team.
after doing.
Yeah.
Actually, getting back to I just thought of it. You took me into the captain's quarters. Was it on a tilt? Was the whole thing on a tilt in there? I don't even
No,
remember.
we just it was we talked about it, tilting it
Yeah.
and making. I mean, the good thing is the ship was stuck in
Well,
ice.
not
So the
necessarily
only time
gimbaling,
it
but was it? I didn't
moved.
know. I couldn't remember if it was like fixed in one angle or something. I can't remember now. But
No, we decided not to really
yeah,
tilt it. It didn't seem worth it.
yeah,
It just wouldn't be noticeable. But remarkable in that captain's quarters is the low ceiling, and I do want to talk a bit about that because Guillermo is, in my mind, famous for his low ceilings. And I went through this on Nightmare Alley with this bungalow, and I was like, I made like the guys do story sticks and put up a flat and say, you want it this low, like people are almost going to duck. And the same thing with the creature in the captain's quarters, the low beams, he had to duck under. And Guillermo's like, this is part of his, this will be part of his dance, his acting, his
yeah.
movement. And Jacob Elordi was very good with movement. And he studied can't remember, the Japanese dance of the dead for his creature movement. Um, so so Guillermo embraces that and like insists on these low ceilings because, like me, he wants to see the ceiling. So what a
Well, yeah.
gift
I
as
mean,
a
we spent all the
production
money.
designer.
How much?
You spent all
There's so
this
much detail
time.
up there. Yeah,
There was
exactly. There's
so
so much
much
detail
detail
up
in
there.
the ceilings. Yeah. Yeah.
But and of course, he's got his round window.
Yeah,
He's
of
got his
course.
Guillermo on his round motifs. I mean,
I
but
didn't even
those are good.
ask. I just did it. On the
You just
ship,
put
it
one
was
in
just
there.
like
Yeah, you knew.
there's the round window. I knew it was coming, so we started with that. And it was really nice because there is a round, Guillermo's obsession with the round. I think in Frankenstein especially has deeper meaning because like the creator, the Dr. Frankenstein, the creator becomes the creature. He becomes the monster, and the creature becomes the human. And it is this cyclical thing towards the end where these roles have switched, and Guillermo can speak to it more eloquently than I can, but the round theme. We every chance I got, I mean, we
Yeah,
had
I
the
mean, you've got your
Medusa. Yeah,
amphitheater. The plan of the amphitheater is round. I
yeah,
mean, you could have gone a square. You could have
exactly.
done a square one, but it's round, and then obviously, there's so many round windows and round voids for him to fall out of in the tower and everything like that.
Yeah, the whole
Um,
vortex shoot is this
so
round.
this way, the vertical
Yeah,
round in
yeah,
and the whole thing.
yeah,
Actually, now since you bring up the tower, again, it's based heavily on the Wallace Monument.
yeah.
Now, the and which is it was a beautiful thing. Did Guillermo know about that, or did you find that?
Oh
Where did
no,
that start from?
we were driving
You
around
stumbled
Scotland,
upon it.
and we saw it in the distance, and
Yeah.
I had seen it in some of the research. Like it was sort of on our list of places to visit, but we saw it in the distance, and we all went wow, and
Wow. Yeah.
then we drove up to it, and we Guillermo didn't, because he wasn't going to do the 286
Oh,
stairs.
did
But
you do the spiral
Miles,
stairs to the top?
Dale, and Guy
Yeah. Yeah.
Davis and I ran up, and I took a million pictures. We were super excited, pictures of the stone. And so, yeah, we used a lot of that. And thanks to the National Scottish Archives, we actually got the plans of it. So that that night, literally, Guillermo was, because we had done some tower stuff, and Guy had done a few things that I thought were really cool, actually. But Guillermo was like, "No, let's do the Wallace Tower." And then again, we were traveling around in Glasgow, and the big scroll, I call them the Sphinx feet, in the front of the tower. Um, that was a church that we were visiting for a church scene, and called Saint Stephen's in what they call New Glasgow, which isn't new at all. And Guillermo just loved these scrolly feet. And so we took those and just copied them, but they were magnified like,
Yeah.
20
Well, I mean, it's
times
funny because
bigger.
architecturally, that's a very odd thing.
Yeah,
The corbel, it's corbel tilted 90
yeah,
degrees.
yeah,
It's a bracket. It's bracket usually holding something up, not flat down. But you know what? You brought up Sphinx, but I immediately thought of Sphinx, or a cat, any sort of lion or anything lying like that with its feet out. And I think some of that is also practically good for you when you built that set on a field
yep,
basically in Markham, because
yep.
you had to contain when you're in the set looking out, you only had a limited view that had to be done digitally, and the rest you had practical on three sides of it. So I think that was obviously well, to me it seemed like that was a clever design architectural move to help
Yeah, it really
the
made a
situation.
courtyard. Yeah, so
That's
they
right.
could really, a lot of
Contained
the
you, because you were
close-up
basically,
scenes,
it was massive. I mean, you're in
it
the
was
middle of
massive.
an empty wasteland. It was a massive thing. So you had this. Oh, by the way, this engravings are in German. What was I had to ask Wasserwerk der
Wasser
Prinz
der
province or something like
Provence.
that.
So it's provincial
What was it?
waterworks. So
But
that would have been like,
weren't
that was,
we in Scotland?
no, we're in Switzerland. I know it's very confusing, but
Ah,
we're
yes, right.
actually
All right, yes.
not at
Sorry, it's
that
the
point.
Scottish mine. Yes, you're right. It's the
He's
Wallace
gone from
mine. Yes,
Edinburgh,
yeah.
you know,
Okay, got it.
and honestly, if you read Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, it reads like a Gothic travelogue. Like she's all over the place. It really is like about these different places. So, part of it was that nod to, yeah, he
Of
magically
course,
somehow got moved from his Edinburgh apartment, which we built on stage,
right.
to his lab, which is somewhere in, the Carpathian Mountains or Switzerland or wherever.
That's right.
After a
That's right. You're
while,
absolutely
again,
right. That makes sense. I don't
I
know.
did, it wasn't about exactly where we were. It was just about being there for Guillermo. And I kept sort of, I needed a map. I needed to route like the journey and stuff for me, because I'm just OCD about that stuff. But Guillermo's just like, whatever, we're here. And it's the Crimean War is the frozen battlefield that was,
Yeah, that's right. That's where all the bodies come from.
and
Of
then you
course,
just,
of course.
you buy into that
Yes.
because you have no choice.
Since we're on the tower still, can I, can we just talk? Let's talk about the very. Look, there's what, five different things inside there. You had the very top peak, obviously. Then you had his lab somewhere in the middle, and then I'm not 100% sure where those beautiful arched where the creature was stored. Was he at the very very bottom, or was he in the middle
Yeah.
somewhere? I'm not
No,
100%
he's
sure.
like he's underground. So we built a set, which is
Okay.
the pinnacle that Victor climbs with the lightning
Yeah,
rod. Then we built what I call the top of the tower, which was a raised set with the start of this vortex where he has the fight with Harlander, and Harlander falls to his
yeah,
death. Then way down is the lab, sort of the main floor, the main part of the middle of the tower, or the lower middle. And then there was the lobby where they entered, where there was the
yeah.
big stairs.
And
And then
explosion
down from
afterwards.
the lobby is the creature's cell, which is
So it's
actually
this. It's this.
subterranean. And what we did is these little skylights, sort of tubes, as if, openings from the
Well, yeah. I'm sure
top.
Dan
So
Louse and the DP would have had a panic if you.
yeah, we had to do
I'm sure the
something.
discussions were pretty interesting about that. Tamara,
Yeah.
how am I going to light this thing? We're underground. Where's the light coming from? There's no windows.
And
There's
then
no nothing.
and those
So
little skylights were never dark enough. They were painted flat of the
Oh
blackest,
yeah,
flattest black you could get. They when they lit them, they looked like,
yeah,
medium gray at best,
yeah.
almost white. And Dan was like, "Why aren't these black?" I'm like, "They're black. There's like there's nothing we can't control the way black reflects the light." Flat black. But yeah, so that was the creature saw, and then it had a chute that went out to
Out into
the cliff edge, and literally there's one of the other locations we went to where I could see Guillermo, like it was done. He walked on this beach, and it was a place called Sea Cliff outside of Glasgow, and he just fell in love with it, and that was like where he wanted the tower to
that's where
be
he
on the
washes, and then he washes up
and
somewhere
that's
around there,
where we
doesn't he? Or
shot the
something?
creature washing up
Yeah.
to basically just as is and postage stamp the miniature tower in the background. Yeah.
Well, there was a pretty. I mean, visiting it practically was pretty epic. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't see it the lab anyway. In its, I only saw it in its when you arrived, and it's an abandoned state. And that's when
Yeah.
now I see all the reference with the Victorian, pumping station or the sewage treatment, the big wheels and the and the big round windows. I mean, it's it was pretty epic, and it was in a very small stage. Can you tell me a little bit about that, because it looks like a
Well,
very difficult set to light,
it
and
was, and
stunning set. It looks stunning anyway. However he lit it, he managed to light it. But um,
barely, like it was
yeah,
within, I'd say, 6 inches of Dan being able to light it. And thank God for Mike Hall, our gaffer, who just said, "I'm going to make this work." We had a bigger stage, and
yeah,
then there was the SAG strike. I can't remember what it was. I think it was a SAG strike, or the writers. Was it?
the writers' strike first, yeah, or one of
Yeah.
them, whatever,
Anyways, it was,
either of
and
those
then
things.
we lost that stage because whatever show sort of had it on hold, and they were going to let us have it. Then the strike ended, I think, and they came back, something like that. And so we lost the bigger stage, and so we really had to pigeonhole it. And there was no way Guillermo wanted to make it smaller, so we
No,
literally
no,
had
no,
banks of
definitely
lights
not.
like very close. And Dan Lauschton and Guillermo, like together, they love to do single source lighting, so everything's coming from outside the sets except for the
Yeah,
candles and some of the oil lamps that we had. And for the medical lecturing, we actually designed a propane lamp with many different propane spots burning. But so it was crucial. We did have a big space in front of the big window, the big round window. So that was a
okay,
lot of the
that was
light
the
that
main
come from it.
source.
That was,
Yeah,
yeah, if we didn't have that, we'd have been screwed because the sides with all the side windows were so tight. But again, the guys, the lighting guys did a fantastic job of making controlled banks of lighting that Dan could use. Um, but it would
I
have been
mean,
nice
well,
to
anyway,
have like another 20 feet would have been
yeah,
great.
exactly, yeah. Or I'm sure construction would have preferred a bit more space around it too.
Oh
It was
yeah,
really
and we
jammed in there. It was really,
we were
really
really
jammed in there when I saw.
crawling all over each other. Like we had a
I,
big set, but yeah.
I mean, I saw some of your making of pictures, and I saw bits of the set just hanging, and I was like, well, why is the whole top of hanging? But well,
Yeah.
you can
So
explain what the process was in that.
yeah, and we did this for most of the sets, like the
Yeah.
Mill House set where the blind man is.
Oh, you did in the
And I
Mill
think
House as well. Okay,
we,
okay. I
yeah,
saw that set too. Yeah.
and I think that's, Mark Kudenbauer, our construction coordinator, has learned to do that through, I mean, he's very experienced now, through time where, if you build, so we built the whole top of the lab on the floor. So the scenics, because everything had to be carved. It was all styrofoam.
Mm.
We didn't
Stone,
do, we
stone.
didn't
Yeah.
do stone plasterwork because it was just such a
Oh, okay.
massive space. The cheapest, most effective way to do it was to carve the styrofoam blocks. So we had scenics crawling all over that ceiling for weeks to get it carved once the guys had finished building it. Then we put it on chain motors and lifted it up and built the riser and
The
the
rest of the
walls
set,
up to it.
right?
And all the walls had to wild. I mean, with this from working with Guillermo. If it doesn't
Yeah, because
wild,
the
it
giant
doesn't
crane.
wild
Yeah, when the giant
super
crane. Yeah,
fast
exactly.
with
Yeah.
the way they shoot on the constant crane, with a big arm going through it, you like everything has to wild. So the Medusa wilded out, all those sidewalls wilded, the big window wilded out. But yeah, and we did that method for pretty much everything. We did the Mill House that way. We did
Top,
we
the
had we
peak.
had to hang the creature's cell. That was all hung, but again, we had to like the guys had to design a system to make the columns wild. So they actually did a like a lock, like a jack sort of thing
Yeah,
that
you showed me. It was pretty
yeah,
great. It was pretty great
yeah,
because a couple of columns from it was. If anyone remembers the set, it was really really low with these amazing Gothic arches or catacomb kind of like thing, and all tile. And so at least you had lines, the tile lines for a break line to lower and remove a
yeah.
column. Well, I mean that set had water. It was a pretty interesting set. Well, I'm just curious. Was there a back? I mean, I like making a backstory for some. Even if no one knows what the backstory is, for my own edification, for my own reality, I like to sort of create a backstory if I can on most of the sort of sets that are we create. I'm just wondering. That was a fun one. What did you have anything in mind for that one? What was
You
it?
know, that actually that
Because
set
it had like it had this
yeah,
it had this it was almost like a Moorish thing where like a Moorish garden where you had this
yeah.
beautiful trough of water going down the thing down the middle, very symmetrical, and then out that again another portal round shape that Guillermo had at the end where eventually the creature slides out of. But I'm just curious. I mean, maybe there wasn't one, but I'm just curious if there was one for that particular
I mean,
set.
from my end, I always wanted to do vaulted ceilings, Gothic
Right,
arch vaulted ceilings. And I know Guillermo loves an arch. That just goes without saying. And then he had Guy do one drawing of the creature and Elizabeth very early on. Terrible sort of costumes were not right, but in front of this round opening with tile, and that was it. That was all. That was all I got.
right,
But
right.
I knew it, so it was a waterworks. So it was like this, it was the underground vault with the water running through it. And it was just a given that we had it going right down the middle towards the chute. And that was all the exercise being, the story of the creature escaping through the chute. Um, yeah, so it was a little bit my obsession with vaulted ceilings, but also the tile work, especially with the vaults, the ribs of the tile work
The
going up
groins,
the
whatever.
the
Yeah.
arches. I wanted that. To me, that was echoing the human body, the spinal, sort of like a spinal column. The bone color was kind of echoing the creature's skin color, so he was really
Oh
in
yeah, he was
part
very
of
much a
this
part of that. Like he
environment. Yeah.
became, yeah, exactly. I noticed that in the thing. I noticed
Yeah,
that
and
in the
then
movie.
we started, like, we had to do real tile. It was a very complicated build between making the actual columns removable and then having to do real tile where the water ran, because you just have to do real tile.
Yeah.
You can't fake it. And then all the rest of the tile pretty much was MDF, little cut, they cut and they painted all those tiles. And then, it was just like every day I'd go there and I'd take a photograph and draw which little tiles would pop
To
off and give
remove.
those to the
Yeah.
same. And then Guillermo had mentioned, harkening back to actually Pan's Labyrinth, he had mentioned he had a moss squad. I was like, what the hell's a moss squad, Guillermo? And he's like, well, we need moss. And so we put together this sort of quasi moss squad, which was both the scenics and our wonderful greens department. And I would go in and sort of draw areas of moss, and then we just started applying moss, and in the creature cell, that's where really it came to life. And I did with the guys, I did like one corner and I took a photo of it and ran to set and I showed Guillermo on my iPad and I was like, do you like this, Guillermo? Because I kind of digging this. And he's like,
Yeah.
yes, more. So we did a
More,
lot
more,
of
more. Yeah. Here we go.
layering of moss. I mean, that's the thing with Guillermo is it's just about layers and layers,
Yeah.
layers of
Aging, aging,
hue and
aging, and aging. You can never have too much aging.
yeah,
By the way,
aging,
looking at
texture.
those, thinking of the Victorians. I mean, beautiful. I love the on that particular picture here, the detail in the corner that the chains are mounted to, but the cast iron corner details of what I assume those are plinths that might have held some old machinery or something, some Victorian
Exactly.
machinery. But
Yeah.
but but so lovely little detail I noticed when
Oh my
well
God,
in the
we
film. But
agonized over that, Paul. I think we agonized. I think Jane drew those, and it was really hard getting that because like cast iron isn't something we really have a lot of, except for the odd frying pan these days. But the Victorians used it a lot, and we were going to a lot of museums in Europe, and I was obsessed with these old cast iron stoves and parts, and like in some of the where they have some of the old oh, there's one in London, the John Sloan House. That
oh
museum
yeah,
had, I was
it's
taking pictures of
fantastic. That's my
the
favorite.
kitchen. Yeah, isn't it great?
That's my
That was
favorite. That's
actually
my favorite little museum. Yeah.
Yeah, Guillermo suggested that one. And I should mention across from it, the Hunterian Museum, which is part of the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons. Guillermo actually had us go there on our first recce visit to London. And that was incredible because it wasn't open yet. And they let us in like 2 days
Oh,
before the
oh,
grand
amazing.
opening. And it had just all the medical stuff of the period was just blew my mind. And that's where they had the Evelyn tables, but that's a separate thing. But going to
I mean,
those
yeah,
museums was such a
incredible.
big
I mean,
part
yeah.
of our world.
That's why luckily you had that reference. I mean, you had that resource when you came scouting. We don't always have that. We only have it through
No,
virtual versions when we're back in Canada. So, um, well, actually, those cast iron things, those Victorians, industrial things were also things of beauty. I mean, they took care. Right now, we just make an I
yeah,
beam and bolt it together, but they would have beautiful details, all the same classical details that you would see in stone or whatever. They were transferred into cast iron. So that's one of the little things I noticed in that
yeah.
particular set. And then I guess since we're still on this set, we're still in this tower. Tell me a little bit about the entry stair. I mean, obviously you must have built that twice you built it once and then had to destroy it. That was where, to me, I saw the most moss. I mean, that was like it was incredibly covered in moss. That's your
The
moss
oh the
squad gone
Yeah, I mean,
wild. Yeah,
it was a later set, and by that time we'd really tonally no, and it wasn't just moss, it was vines and stuff. And it was really for me like, my love of nature and this idea that nature takes back, and we
yeah.
abandon things and nature
Quickly.
takes back. And
Yeah,
I think for Guillermo, that was also sort of, it wasn't an obvious theme, but it was always there. And in a weird way, especially I think going back to the creature cell, the creature, even though he was human made, was somehow more connected to nature than Victor. Victor was, and so I think that lobby just you wanted to feel the abandonedness, but also the fact that nature was going to take it back, and that was wet and dripping, and there's nothing like moss and vines to get that feeling. And just I think also just the texture of it too, the texture of abandonment. I have all those books and of abandoned buildings, and I'm sure
yes,
you do
yeah. We
too,
all do.
where they
We all do.
all those abandoned boilers
Yeah.
with old industrial plants that are just covered in moss. So we really were drawing from that.
All right. Well, maybe we've exhausted the tower. Well, let's go. Let's go to another set that I happened to luckily visit, which was the mill.
Yeah.
I remember going. I mean, well, when I first walked into the mill was obviously there was the main sort of, I guess, not residential. I guess it's residential part portion of it, and then there was obviously the gears and the big wheel on the outside. And when I walked in, the wheels, the gears were amazing. They were all looked like they were made out of solid wood, and they all worked. I think they all worked. They weren't moving when I was there, but they were pretty impressive. And it reminded me of Pan's Labyrinth actually, because that main set had a massive mill and a lot of the gears. And I'm just wondering if that was something conscious that Guillermo had written into the script. I mean, I know he's self-referential. When I worked with him on Shape of Water, he referenced when we were doing this round shape behind the tank that the creature comes out of with all these pipes. He referenced something from Mimic, and I'm just wondering if he may
I
not
love
have, but I'm
that.
wondering if he referenced anything from one of his previous movies, like
I mean,
Pan's
I
Labyrinth,
think
for that particular set.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know this as well as me. You just kind of study Guillermo's films. So
Yeah,
I had watched Pan's Labyrinth just again just before while I was prepping Frankenstein because I felt like of all his movies there was a connectedness. But even like Pinocchio, which is this, animated, has like
yeah,
elements like, but the Gear Room, yeah, very specifically. And we did, it's interesting. So, it's round, it's gears, and we did make special effects made the gears move. They did move. But I
yeah.
think Guillermo was at the last minute he decided it was too much, to
Right,
have too many
right.
moving parts, and so he wanted the option, but we didn't actually move the gears, and they were a bit scary because they were built out of real wood. I'm sure
It
some of
was heavy, heavy. Look, I know.
heavy, because the only way to do it, at the post and beam structure of the ceiling in the mill was all built out of old recycled wood that Mark found from old barns and an old industrial warehouse, I think. And the guys built it. I mean, yeah, there's screws in there, but they actually did it with, the pegs
Pegs.
in the holes.
Yeah, Amazing.
that we could see, and they were practical, with additional screws. And I was glad we did that because in this one scene, Jacob Elordi sort of suggested to Guillermo that he climb up and read the book up in the rafters. And I was like, well, if we'd built those out of styrofoam and carved them, they would, we'd never have that scene. So I'm glad we built it all for real. And it just, building stuff for real, you can never get it. Real wood is real wood. That
Yeah.
wall where the creature peeks through and is watching the family.
Yep.
I mean, it's exquisite, and it's not by my design, it's by nature's design, because what we
Nature's
did was we
knots and
took
things.
the knots, and the knots became
Hmm.
the peak holes, and they just, as the guys put it together, and we then went with Guillermo and said, okay, how much space do you want? How much of the eye of the creature do you want to see? And do you like this? So we actually moved this one board, I remember, with the knots in it to a specific spot for the creature.
Specific spot. Yeah.
But
Actually,
yeah,
speaking of Jacob climbing, I mean, I think you mentioned, or I read it somewhere about the outside of the building.
yeah,
He ended up you had already built the mill house, and then you figured something was missing, and you added this beautiful sort of
yes,
Eastern European or mountainous alpine kind of little detail on the ridge at the end of the ridge, and then Guillermo had Jacob sit on it or climb on it. So
but yeah, it was
what happened there? Oh, there it is. There, that
yeah,
detail
there it
on
is.
the end. Yeah.
So we had built the mill house in the fall, and the guys had to build it before the winter because it'd just be too hard to build it out, out in Kleinburg where we built this thing. And it didn't have mounts around it like that. Those were added by VFX. Those are actually the Canadian Rockies, which we did scout. But that little turret thing, I think there's another slide that shows the evolution of it. But yeah, because we had sat there and looked at it and it was beautifully aging out there. But Guillermo said, he could use something more, a focal point. And I was like, damn, you're right. And so I started sketching out. Yeah, I
Oh,
started
there's the old
sketching out
one.
this
Yeah, there
little
you go. Yeah.
thing. And then Andy Sanger, amazing modeler and graphic guy, he modeled it up and then we carved it and we put it on the roof. But you see that one slide where the creature is sitting. We
Oh,
didn't
yeah, it's
finish.
beautiful.
We
Yeah.
had not finished that. We did not shingle enough under the
Oh,
creature, but we did not shingle that whole side of the roof.
oh,
It,
okay.
it was
So
unfinished.
Dennis fixed it
Dennis,
for you.
our wonderful visual effects artist and team, had to help us with that. But you know, so much for planning. Guillermo didn't really care. It's like, oh yeah, VFX, we can fix that.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
really wanted that roof peak, and I think when we were arguing to spend the money on it, and Guillermo who's also a producer, has to sort of make that argument with himself because it was like $30,000 or something. It wasn't that much, but in the grand scheme of things. And I think he
So
justified
look
by
at that
adding that
silhouette. I mean,
moment
yeah.
of
Look at
having
that.
Jacob up there.
Yeah.
And it was a cool moment. Like it was
Yeah.
just cinematic and beautiful.
Sun setting and everything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to go to one of your interior sets, which I didn't go to the mill outside, but I did go to the inside of the mill. But I did also go to the inside of I think it says Edinburgh apartment. And I
Yes.
remember, I mean, I think you probably have a plan drawn of it here somewhere. I was just studying the plan the other day, and I thought, oh my God, it was so crooked. And it's like a Tudor kind of. Again, I'm here in England. There's a crazy warped Tudor house right outside my window, just downstairs from
Yeah.
here, and it's amazing how wonky they can be. And I remember you telling me that everything's wonky, and I thought, oh my God, how hard would it be? When I saw the plan, I realized how hard it would be for the construction guys to actually lay that out because there was not one right angle. Yeah, there's the plan below. Yeah, look at that. I
Yeah,
mean,
there's
that's
my
not
my
one right
first
angle.
plan. It looks like a crazy dance of walls when I look at
That's
that.
right.
And
They look so out of whack. But yet,
yeah,
weirdly,
yeah.
my recollection of being in there, it felt like it was wonky. Like it did what it purported to do, and it felt like it was a bit out, but it wasn't super like wildly. Like when I look at that plan, it wasn't as wildly um, out of whack in my mind looking at it. I saw it fully dressed, of course. I think you're about to shoot it the next day. But I
Yeah.
mean, I can't imagine like what Mark would have said when he first arrived with that set of plans. And I mean,
Yeah,
I think they also tilted. I mean, they also tilted from. They weren't vertical either. Some of them tilted in and out, right?
exactly. And it's funny because like we tilted the F out of them, and they to me it just never it didn't show as much. But in the end, I think you feel it, like you
Oh
feel
no, you
even
felt
the
it,
audience
but it doesn't
feels it.
like that looks like overkill to me. Like in the
Yeah,
plan, it looked like, oh my God, that's crazy. But then when you're in there, it just felt kind of right, which is pretty good.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
again, I've also stayed at some of these places here that have the floor is where you really, as a person walking through the space, it's the wonky floors that really do it. But obviously in film, that would be a bad
yeah.
thing,
I
probably
would
the
have.
wonky floors. So
I wanted to do the wonky floor, and they shoot on a crane. I could probably have gotten away
yeah.
with it, but you just don't see it enough, and it does become a tripping hazard. And there was so much stuff in there. It wouldn't have been worth it. And layers of carpets and the beautiful set dressing that Shane put together with his team. But this was one of the first sets we did, and I just loved it. And but what I'm thinking, as you can sort of see it because this is the actual set photo, as we're tilting these walls both vertically and horizontally, there were these huge gaps, and they were like, well, what are you going to do with the gaps?
Oh,
And so I said, well, we'll
right.
just stuff it with horsehair, or what, our
Yeah.
facsimile of horsehair and newspaper, what they would have used for insulation at the time. So we had to go around and do these big, you can sort of see it in the corner there, these
Oh, is
big
that what it is
chunky
there in
things.
the corner? I see it.
Yeah.
I see it now in the corner of the
And
pictures.
age it and age it and age it. And then, these giant windows, which always remind me of what's the Demon Barber of Fleet Street?
Oh,
What's that?
Barbara Seville. Yeah, yeah.
Barber,
Or yes,
not the,
Barbara.
the
No, no.
yeah,
Yeah, the Scorsese movie,
the
right?
one. That one.
Yeah, that
Those
one.
windows, I was definitely echoing the design of that with those windows, but they were maddening to light for Dan because all you saw was the studio ceiling. And so, Shane tested a bunch of fabrics and we made those shades. Beautiful aged, you don't see it in this photo, but beautiful aged you know, window coverings. Yeah, that set was just like to me it was just everything about this set I loved. I just
Well, by the way, hats off to Shane. We haven't talked about Shane, but obviously
yeah.
Shane. I also worked with Shane, and hats off to Shane and the whole team on the set dressing and that because it was. I saw this when it was just like this basically, and it was pretty great stuff in
Yeah.
there. I mean, look, there's a crocodile or an alligator hanging out in the corner there
Well, and
above our heads.
a lot of this comes from Bernie Wrightson, who's no longer alive, but Guillermo has a collection of his graphic illustrations he did a series on Frankenstein. He's not a comic book artist. He's more than that. He's an amazing illustrator. And so we were really looking at these illustrations of Bernie Wrightson and had this kind of agreement. I think he's actually in the credits of the movie. And so those round things that are hanging, like it's crazy. If you ever get a chance, look up Bernie Wrightson Frankenstein Lab and these crazy round balls that he had hanging from the ceiling and chains and stuff. So we really evoked a lot of Bernie Wrightson's vibe in this as well. As well
Anyway,
as the Crooked Tudor House, the Moreton
the
House.
Crooked Tudor
That's the
House.
one that I was really looking at. This crazy house in the UK, somewhere outside of London, that is literally, that was my first reference. It's literally so crooked.
No, I mean, I guess there's one more set, and then I guess there was a Royal College of Surgeons set, the theater. I mean, that was one. I know when I came through. I remember you referenced there was some. I think in Glasgow there was some lobby or some big grand entrance that had beautiful tiles and everything, and I guess that was supposed to be connected to this particular set.
Yes,
And I guess you mentioned the other day that it actually either they shot it and it got cut, or they didn't shoot it because of
we
time.
didn't
And
shoot
but
it.
oh, you didn't shoot it at all. Oh, I see. Okay.
No,
But
we
anyway,
were
you but
going
but you
to.
got but you
Yeah,
got great reference for the floors
absolutely.
and I presumably all the architectural details and the marbling and the marble in the
Everything.
walls.
We
Yeah,
were because at the time we were designing it, we were going to be shooting it in the Glasgow City Hall, which is incredible. Had the
yeah.
floor, we photographed the floor, and we did a digital replication of that tiled floor, the mosaic tile floor, all the marble, all those different marbles, the
On
balustrades.
the walls.
We had these
Yeah,
little crazy
yeah.
cookie things. All of that came from the Glasgow City Hall, and my effort to blend it in, so they were going to go out the door, there was going to be this long hallway scene, and that ended up being on the city streets instead, which I think was a good call because it was beautiful, but it was a little bit of shoe leather. But I was glad, like in the end, it was nice to have something to really grab onto for us and designing it. And the whole art department had somewhere to kind of go, and we'd photographed this every paint. There are all these different paint textures and marble, and then faux marble, and all these things that actually exist in the Glasgow City Hall. If you ever get a chance to visit, it's worth it. And that was really super nice. And the round thing obviously is a Guillermo thing, but most of these anatomical theaters were in the round of the period.
Mm,
And there's some that still exist. There's a veterinary that I looked at to shoot in. There's one in London that was just way too small. And then there's a veterinarian one in Berlin that we looked at that was just too white, but old, and beautiful.
yeah.
And then I think there's one in Padua in Italy that is incredible, and it's incredibly steep. I don't know if it still exists, but we're looking at a lot of round anatomical theaters. Yeah, and then that
Oh,
crazy
this one.
table we had to build. And there's you can see the light fixture that we made from actually Shane got a great reference for that. And we did it.
Oh, and is that a gas one? Is that with
That's
flames?
gas when it was actual gas.
Oh,
We
yeah. Okay.
special effects
Wow.
hooked it up for us and we were able to dial the flame.
Yeah.
It gave a little bit of ambient light and didn't light it, but you can see the flames in that photo.
Yeah.
It really sort of set the tone. And then there was a lot of what I call God lighting from the windows that we didn't build at the top. But the idea is that, if we saw
Yeah.
the top, I don't think VFX actually had to do much, but it would have domed up, which was very much like the Berlin Anatomical Lecturing Theater.
And there's Dan's very strong single source that you can see
God
there.
lighting. I
I'm
call it God lighting.
God lighting. I mean, the thing, I mean, for me too, anytime you can find a real location to use as reference for your whole team, I mean, you can't beat it. So, I mean,
So helpful.
that's why the
Yeah.
sets turn out so well when you have really, really good reference to go from. I
Yeah,
mean,
uh, and then like to do that mosaic tile floor that we actually were able to. I mean, it's a huge job that I think Andy Sang spent days, weeks on. Who's one of the fastest people around. But it was intense to actually like lay out that all that mosaic and make it look real. But we had a lot
I
of
guess that would be in Photoshop, right? Did you Photoshop that, or
yeah,
how did you do
yeah,
that one?
from
Yes,
the
but you
photographs.
had the real pictures. Yeah, you had the real pictures. But
Yeah,
obviously the
so I
shape
mean,
here
I
was
think
just
in
search
the
the
end
shape
we
would be different than the real
yeah
one. So you just take all the different colors and
yeah. I mean, but
I did a
it
similar
altered the
thing on
design.
Pompeii. It's painful.
Yeah,
It's very 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 long, a
I
long
mean, in the
arduous
end, I
process.
think in the end, Andy pretty much redrew the whole thing. But to
Yeah,
have the photos to start with, and the
yeah.
motifs, like there was sort of a Greco-Roman detail and other detail. And then, of course, we did the round thing because we love a round. Guillermo loves a round thing.
Now, okay, so now Glasgow City Hall, you were going to shoot as a location, you didn't shoot. We haven't talked about any of the locations. I mean, you probably have other sets that I never
Oh, we
saw.
should
I
talk
didn't
about the
see, obviously,
library, the
the library,
father's
but that's a
study.
location. But that's a location.
Yeah.
But there's no other practical sets that I should be talking about. Are there? I mean, I know there were. There was obviously that Arctic some that
Yeah.
place where
There
they
was
buy
the
supplies. I
bathroom.
think
There
the
was the
bathroom. Didn't remember the bathroom, but anyway, it doesn't matter.
where
Let's.
Harlander goes to the bathroom, and it was one of my favorite sets, the smallest set we did. It
Oh
wasn't
no.
that small, but yeah, it was good because we had to match to these locations in Scotland. Yeah, what other
But yeah,
sets?
locations. I mean, let's go. Let's skip. I don't know if we're going to run out of time if we keep going
Yeah.
with sets. But and there's some amazing locations you shot at here in the UK. So let's just start talking about those. I mean, obviously there's the houses you went to. What was it? Which one was the outside house? With all the beautiful scene where they came down the
Yeah.
stairs with the big when the wind gust takes her really ephemeral like veil and wafts it up. By the way, I don't know if this is true, but I was told that that happened just by accident.
It did kind
Surely
of.
they had a
It was very windy
did
there.
it? Oh wow,
We did
okay.
have a fan. We had a fan,
You
but
had fans
it was
because it was
yeah,
so beautiful. That was such a beautiful
so
scene with
gorgeous. Yeah.
that ephemeral cloth just
Yeah.
like blowing when she
So
came down the
that
stairs.
So the actual Frankenstein family villa estate was five different locate. Well, one was a
Okay.
studio. So we built the bedroom, which was the dad's bedroom where the
Oh yes,
fun
yes,
my
that's
Matt
right. Yeah.
Cassini's place. So that was built in Toronto. And from that, I was drawing from all these different places. So one was Wilton House, where what's the movie? Oh my God.
Gosford Park.
No,
Gosford Park.
No, not Gosford. Oh, well, Gosford Park, maybe. The Barry Lyndon was shot there.
Oh,
And
oh, sorry,
Guillermo was
Maryland. Yes.
very
Oh,
excited
yes.
that
Oh,
Barry
yeah. Right.
Lyndon
Of
was,
course.
that
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
one of our
Yeah.
big reference movies. So Wilton House, Burley House, which is also outside of London, but the other way. So we were a bit
Yeah.
all
It's
over the
like an
place.
hour and I've shot there. It's a
Um,
beautiful house. I mean, that was
yeah.
a beautiful
And
house.
then,
I
then
recognize some painting, like all those
yeah,
amazing
it
rooms,
was
the painted rooms.
so,
Yeah. That
yeah,
was a
the
good one.
mother's
Very
bedroom.
photogenic. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Guillermo, there was a kitchen scene that Guillermo cut when he
Oh,
had to
that's a really
shorten.
good kitchen.
Yeah, but I think he's gonna.
With the dog run to
Yeah,
turn
oh, amazing. Yeah,
the dog wheel to turn the spit. You know,
yeah. I
that's a
think he's
beautiful
gonna
kitchen. That
put
one.
do a longer version, a longer cut of Frankenstein, and put some of those scenes that he cut back.
Right.
So, and then we had Gosford House, which is outside of Glasgow, which it was the big exterior with the stairs and the round marble double staircase, which I knew when I saw photos of it early on, I knew Guillermo would love that staircase, but it was just so white on white. And I really literally dug deep to find photos of it lit in a way that it didn't look so white because
Yeah,
I just
Dan wouldn't like it either. Like, yeah,
yeah,
Dan
and
would be all over.
he was pretty. I mean, it wasn't white, but he was pretty good about it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I found that from watching this Outlander, this crazy sort of Harlequin romance period drama that they shoot in Scotland that my husband became actually addicted to. Um, but I started watching like what's been shot in Scotland. Like we're going to go there. I
blame it
need
on your husband.
yeah. Anyways, it's very charming, but
Yeah, Ken.
they
Yeah.
shot there, and that was a great one for the interior. And then we used Dunecht House, which is was never filmed in before, where we found the crazy library. And I don't know if we have the slide of that, but we walked
Oh,
into this
yeah.
place. It was this long red room covered with it had been recently decorated with pennants for a kid's birthday party. And poor Chris Penna, I got him to do initial illustration from a photo, and I had all I had were these photos with pennants and red walls, and we completely transformed that space as the father's library or study. And that to me was like, one of the best locations ever to have successfully transformed. And I
Oh,
knew
that
when
was
we walked
yeah.
in, it
I
was
didn't
it
think
was
I thought it was real.
cinematic.
I mean,
There it
oh,
is.
there you go. There it is. It's a
That's
beautiful space.
that's the I can't tell if that's the final that's the final look. But I knew when we walked in, it was one of those ones where Guillermo just loved the depth of it because it was so cinematic and it was hellish to light because that's all real skylights at the top.
Yeah.
And there were none of those bookcases. We built all those bookcases, which we did leave in the
Oh, you
house.
left them there. Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, for the
Okay.
family that owns it, they're planning to make it like a wedding, I think like a wedding reception hall and
Yeah.
rent it out. But yeah, so it would have originally had those bookcases all the way up, and we just built them in the UK. A lot of the stuff we built in for the UK, we built in Canada that required carving, like the giant family tombstone, because we had a really excellent group of sculptors in Canada. We just had a small team in the UK, but an excellent team. So they built all those repeated bookshelves and installed that. But yeah, this was like it was this red walled kids' toys everywhere. We walked in and I was like, okay, and the floor was ruined. It was, the family redid the floor for us beautifully and they did it to exactly our tone. A
Oh,
beautiful
oh, okay. So
floor.
that is the real that they redid
That
it. All
is
right,
the
perfect for
real
you.
wooden floor, but the skylights were leaking. There were huge stains everywhere. It was a mess.
Well, that's the
Um,
funny thing about these stately homes. I mean, you go, I don't know, you went to a lot of them. Burley
yeah.
House also. You go Burley House is the example. You go to the private wing where they actually some people live in it, and there's a sculpture hall down there with
It's
Roman
amazing.
busts,
Yeah.
amazing paintings. And then in my instance, I walked through there. There's like a plinth with some cardboard tube, toilet roll, sculpt spaceship, and some Legos. And then you go to the front door, and there's like a million piles of kids' shoes, and this in this epic, huge space. People actually live there as well in parts of it. And they can't afford half of these places, so they have to rent out, figure out ways to
Exactly.
generate
Yeah.
income. But they still live there, and they have to live within this
And
incredibly
they live in
grand
one corner, like on and
space.
this in the
Yes,
next
because
house.
they can only afford to heat that. They can only afford to heat that one
Exactly.
corner.
They
So
renovated, they had a very big kitchen, kind of family room, and they all hunkered down in there. They were lovely. They invited us in for tea and cookies But they literally lived in maybe 1/10 of this giant place. Beyond at the end there, there's actually a fairly sizable chapel. And again, we shot a scene in there with Elizabeth, who was in a convent, and we did an exterior at this same place. That got cut, but I think that those I'm hoping will reappear in Guillermo's longer cut.
Well, I mean, this was a really good transformation because I had no idea. I think it was Brant that told me. I was asking him about where was that, because I have never seen this one before, and he told me, he surprised me by saying they built all that library stuff in there, and again, that really made it
Yeah, I
sing,
mean,
obviously, and
again,
it's nice when you can change something like that.
yeah, and again, the set dressing that Shane brought in, and the antique books that we had. I mean, and shooting in the UK has like so much of the stuff that we used in Victor's apartment, that crooked apartment, came from the
Yeah,
UK in the
yeah.
beginning, and we were lucky we had a team on. Well, we had Paulina Calentis, who was in the UK from the very beginning, so
Okay.
we had this flow
So
and this
she shipped you
connectivity.
some
Yeah,
containers of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, a lot of sourcing from.
What other? So what other? I'm trying to think. What other locations? Obviously, there was Burley House, which had a lot of the big rooms,
Well,
and then
we shot the Arctic stuff. We shot in Black Creek, Pioneer Village in Toronto.
oh, you
One
did.
of
Okay. Yeah,
our favorite go-to places. So
yeah, yeah.
we shot a couple of things there. The interior of the Silversmiths. So the exterior was actually shot at Gosford,
Okay.
in the carriage house, and the interior was in one of I think it's the mill house, the mill building at Black Creek, and then we did the interior of the Arctic. There sort of was like Arctic
The storehouse, whatever. Yeah, yeah, that one.
storehouse
Yeah,
with this
I was wondering if you
crazy.
was that a set or was that a location?
No, that was the carriage house at Black Creek.
Oh, okay. So
So
Black Creek did you
we
well.
made a day or two at Black Creek of filming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're always they're so good to us at Black Creek. I love shooting there. Um,
And then you must have done a fair bit in Edinburgh or Glasgow outside, right? I guess Edinburgh
yeah,
probably,
well, we
right? It's more
basically
twisted streets or
all the Royal Mile, the Parliament Square with the market, which at the period that's where the market would be. So
yeah.
we built all those market stalls and shipped them over. We built them in Canada, shipped them over.
Oh, you built them
The
here
lumber
or
cost.
there? Yeah, wow.
We built,
Okay.
yeah, it was actually just cheaper because the lumber costs, I think.
Yeah.
And we had the people, the set dressers built those, and we just had the crew here, and we kept it smaller in the UK, and the cost difference of shipping containers full of set dressing was nominal. So yeah, so we but we were there basically at the height of the tourist season. So we had a wall built, and we had crowds of people, and then we shot in Writers Close, where we did the hangman. And we like our locations team in Edinburgh they were top notch. They had to go and knock on every door because it's residences. This
Yeah.
may be a disturbing scene, and people who may have
Yeah.
mental health issues are not going to like seeing guys hanging.
Somebody hung. Yeah.
So there was a lot of work just getting the public on board. But those gallows we did build in the UK because we had to have our UK stunt team and special effects team work together. So we built them right at Shepperton where we had the miniatures, and they were great. Yeah, and every like when I my first trip to Edinburgh, I was there with Guillermo, and the night before I was going to take him out, I had done tons of research, and I ran with Morven McPherson. Her and I, she was our location scout and manager, ran and saw I had a list of they call them closes, so these little alleys off the main Royal Mile. And we ran into as many as we could see. I think there's about 85 of them. We ran into as many as we could see, and I made a short list for the next day of
Yeah.
ones that I felt we had to show Guillermo. So with the one with the Butcher Alley, where the entrance to off the Royal Mile into his apartment, that was to me, it's called Baker's Close. It's just fantastic, but it's also in Outlander, and
No.
there's
Ken
fans of
Ken showed
Outlander
it to
who
you.
come
Yes.
there, and we were like
Oh
literally
no.
showing it to Guillermo and Dan the first time. And there was like a group of women coming, going, and this is Madam What's Her Face's parlor, entrance, blah blah blah. So it was fun though.
I
Now I
hate to
think people go
interrupt,
there
but
and
we're
go,
just
this is where
getting,
they shot Frankenstein.
I hate to interrupt, but
Okay.
I want to kind of get into some questions in a few minutes. So,
Okay,
Okay.
wow.
I've got. I can wrap it up. I've got two things. My favorite. I'm gonna ask. I'll tell you my favorite prop. My favorite prop was your death masks from when the parents died, and I just want to, so beautiful, so powerful, those things, and I think they're real, right? They're Victorian or something. But anyway,
Yeah, I mean,
stunning use of them. Yeah.
yeah, again, we carved them from, photographs and scans that we had of the actors, the father and the mother who played those. But that was based on real research. And then, a guy took our research and he did some sketches, and then Andy fully 3D modeled them, and then we carved them. And again, kudos to
Oh,
our sculptural team.
all right.
And one was like ivory, cast.
That's right. And one was
These things
black.
actually
Yeah.
existed, and they were used because people used to steal bodies. So if you bolted your loved one's bodies in if you could afford to. That was one story I read. And
Yeah.
the other one was that they had communicable syphilitic diseases that nobody wanted to get around the corpse, so they embody them in these big
Right.
iron casks. Anyways, pick your
Okay.
story.
I'll finish. I'll finish because everyone always asks me, "What's your favorite set on a Shape of Water?" For instance, seems like a silly question, but I'm going to ask it to you.
Well, I want to know what your favorite set on Shape of Water is first.
Oh, mine actually, I would have originally I would have thought it'd be like the lab or something, like one of these crazy labs. But I actually loved her apartment, Eliza's apartment, because it was such
Yeah. Yeah, it was
a
beautiful.
small, beautiful, like really textured. It was all about her and water
Yeah.
and everything. Anyway, it's so layered, that one.
Yeah,
But
it was
so
such a perfect character piece. I guess for me, I think it's Victor's Edinburgh apartment with the crooked wall. But the
nice.
creature, I can't have a favorite. The
I know
creature
it's
itself
tough.
to me was just
You
like,
got a lot of beautiful ones.
yeah, and the lab was breathtaking. Like when the crew
Yeah.
first arrived at the lab, I mean, I'd been just looking at it first in renders and illustrations, and as we were building it. But when they first arrived and it was the abandoned lab, and the crew walked in and turned and said, "Oh my God!" When you get a
Yeah.
reaction like that, you're like,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
did this. We built this. This is amazing."
Nice.
So I can't pick a favorite. They're all my
No.
babies.
Okay, that's fine. It's just one of those things that happen that people ask all the time. I'm like, I'm just curious.
I can pick
I
your
now have a
favorite.
chance. I'm gonna have a chance and ask it to you. But anyway, let's open it up to sorry, Marianne.
No, I'll just come on. No, that was fantastic. And
Yeah.
really, there was just the colossal creative gorgeousness of Frankenstein. It was just so delicious, sort of like hearing you talk about it. And I'd seen some of your images, I'd seen more images as well. But yeah, no, it was really just thanks so much for your time today. And there's not a lot of questions, and I'll just flag we had a problem with the chat, and so anyways, there's a few questions in here, and I've got a few questions, and we still have 79 people out there, so feel free to put your questions into the chat because we still have about 10 minutes left of this event. So there was a question from Laura McNutt. Hi, Laura. And your question got answered, but her question was, I was so entranced by the images that I missed where a library transformation was. And then Audrey Pinnock answered it and said it was Denecht House. So is that true? Is
Yeah,
that
the Neck House,
okay.
privately owned family house.
With
Never
all the
shot it
shoes, with all the
before.
kids' shoes in the
Yeah.
front hallway. That's the
Yeah, it was crazy. It was just
yeah.
nutty. Skateboards. They were
Yeah.
skateboarding down that wood floor.
No,
I
it's
mean,
just like amazing. Like it's just such a
mhm.
really colossal scope of work that was put together for this. So
There was
congratulations.
another, I love shooting at a location that hasn't been shot at before. There's something
Yeah, of
magical.
course.
And we also shot in Hospital Field House, which was Harlander's house. And that was it was built as an artist's residency. And it was just so meaningful to shoot somewhere where artists are being supported. And Guillermo actually met with a young video artist, took time from his busy day to meet with her and invited her to watch the filming. That was to me magical, which was Harlander's house where we had the Evelyn table and he's got the music room where Elizabeth is playing. And nobody had ever shot there before. It's just so beautiful.
Yeah, that's fantastic. There are a few questions. What was the total budget spent for PD? This is from Louis P. Garcia. What was the total
For
budget
the
spent?
for the construction build, I believe we were at 10.5 million roughly for just all the scenic construction in both the UK and Canada.
That's labor and materials.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
There's
And is that US or US dollars?
That would be Canadian, and don't quote
Oh,
me
okay.
on that. And I wish Brent was here
yeah.
because I stay on budget, but I don't pay attention to once it's approved. I'm like, just let me go.
I'm just going to interject. There's a couple more questions, but I just have to interject. It was really surprising to hear you mention that you had to have so much of the beautiful work crafted in Toronto because, I mean, one Britain's famous for its like its Foster's and
Absolutely.
its Harbors and all that stuff. So it was an interesting thing that that's what you found.
Yeah, I think Britain's also famous for being a little more expensive and the materials are more expensive, but the crew is top notch, like absolutely for sure. And
Mm.
but so were our Canadian crews, so it was just logistically we had a great
Mhm.
small team, a little construction shop there, but they didn't have a big enough mill
Yeah.
to handle the amount of
All
work
that
that
work,
we
yeah.
had.
Yeah.
Just to do those library shelves, they were chock-a-block full.
Um, there's okay, there's a question from Gordy Miller. What's next for you both? And
Jordy.
congratulations on your beautiful work and accomplishments.
Hi, Jordy. I know who that is.
Mhm.
He actually worked on the film.
Oh,
So all those beautiful drawings that you see of Frankenstein are Jordy's drawings.
oh
He's our sketch artist go-to. What's next? I'm gonna walk my dog and wait for something really. If something as delicious as Frankenstein comes along, I'll do it. But right now, I'm happily living in Cape Breton and just trying to actually do my own artwork. I started last year. I started a graphic novel. I've been trying to do some painting and some writing.
yeah.
So that's kind of my mindset right now.
Mhm.
I'm maybe still PTSD from doing Frankenstein, even though it's been a couple of years now. But yeah, I just want to live life. And Paul is working. Tell us,
Yeah.
Paul, what do
I
you do?
should have
Well,
mentioned
actually,
Paul's in London, England, so I forgot to
I'm in
mention that
London,
at the
but
start.
weirdly enough, I'm working on a film that we lost our actor, so it went down. But I'm still here, and I've been working on a commercial last week with Gordon Ramsay, and I'm going to Toronto for 2 weeks to shoot another. I'm coming back here to shoot another commercial, so I'm just filling in with some commercials while we're waiting to see about recasting. So,
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh, the
yeah.
film
So
industry,
that's what
right?
the
Yeah.
film industry. Yeah.
Peaks and
It's just
valleys, ebb and flow. All that. So there's a question
change
from
your
Joe
life on a
Reimer.
dime.
Frankenstein was made for Netflix, but I had the honor of watching it on the big screen. How did you find balancing the art between what is going to work best on a giant theater screen versus on a small smartphone?
God,
Smartphone.
if
Hopefully, you
somebody's
didn't watch it
watching
on a
this on a
smartphone.
smartphone, loser. Um, I only think about the big screen, and I always think, having worked in television a fair bit, I still think that people see. Hopefully, they're not watching on their smartphones. I know they do, and I'm watching airplanes, which is a terrible mistake, and I'm guilty of it myself. But I think the TVs we have now, these high definition TVs, and you be very careful with your settings. They still show so much detail. So,
Oh yeah,
I mean, and I think I probably speak for Paul too. We're just designing for the big screen because you have to do that.
always. Yeah.
Even if you know it's going to end up on TV, it's
People
everything.
can freeze frame a television, a high def television, and look at things. But it's probably worse than a movie because they can
Yeah,
freeze frame and like come up and stare at it and go, "Wait a minute,
Yeah.
the art department forgot to do that over there."
It,
So
it looks like video from like 1980s or something, that really high
yeah.
def to me. So flat. Um, so Derek Howard asked, talk about some of the details in smaller pieces like the doctor's bag.
The doctor's bag was Guillermo and Guy Davis concocted this doctor's bag. Chris Gagey, our amazing props builder, had Walter Clausen build it. And it was actually, which I love Guy, but like it was impossible to build. You couldn't actually open all the sides of it. So we had to figure that out. But yeah, we built it, custom built. And of course, it ended up in Guillermo's house where a lot of these
of
things
course,
thankfully go because it's like Guillermo's house. Guillermo's
yeah,
house is like a
that way.
museum, but it was beautiful. And Walter Clausen, they also did the big Y crucifix. I call it the Y crucifix. Amazing job, amazing work by the artisans there. Kudos to them for sure.
I'm going to jump over one of the questions to go to one by Joshua Turpin for both of you, for both Paul and Tamara. When you first read a script, what is the one decision you make early on that ends up shaping the entire visual world project?
Oh
Hmm.
God.
Is there one answer for that?
I don't know if there is a one answer to that. I mean, there's always so many. I mean, the
You
scripts.
know,
Well, all scripts are so different. I mean, to start with, and maybe at the beginning one has to latch onto something to inform your pitch. I mean, when you read a script, you don't always obviously you don't necessarily have the job. You have to pitch the director something. I mean, luckily, Tamara, I've been working with Guillermo, and I've worked with people that I've worked with before. But sometimes you have to pitch these things, And sometimes you select something that you latch onto and you develop your whole scheme. But if the director doesn't buy that, or they have another idea, it could work against you. So it's a very, very tricky thing, I think.
I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, it's easier working with Guillermo because I know I have a language, a visual language with him. But I think I always, I think we're all storytellers, and I always latch onto the characters. It's like when we're
Mm.
talking about the apartment in Shape of Water, like that's a character piece. You're trying to bring a character to life, and those are the things I really think about is how to breathe life into the characters, which for the creature was particularly difficult because he didn't really have a place. Like Victor had, he had a family house, he had a apartment here, he had the lab, and those were all his own. And so I struggled a bit with the creature, but it made sense because he's, this man-made thing.
Um, there's a question. Oh, sorry, is it? Sorry. Since you are both, this is from Shane Marshall. Since you both are amazing professionals, have been in the industry for some time. Do you have any advice or tips for someone looking to enter this field?
I see there's a couple of questions like that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I think it is a little more difficult to get into film now, but I know, just getting on anything that you can get on, music videos, commercials, work on, indie films, they're still alive. There's a great one that just came out here in Cape Breton that Cape Bretoners are going crazy for, Little Lorraine. I'm plugging it because I met the director and he's lovely. But like get on a low budget do whatever you can to get on a film set, and or in an art department, and also just learn about things, like keep your mind open and keep your tentacles out, just researching, learning, looking, watching movies, reading books. Don't sit on the internet and make the world come to you. Go out to the world, go to museums, go to bookstores, go to, look at paving stones, travel if you can, or look at pictures if you can't. Paul?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the same kind of thing. I mean, really, your job is obviously to help get that director and the script vision to life. So you have to be always absorbing things. But in this day and age, like Tamara says, there's all kinds of ways to make films. Students are making films on an iPhone. So if you can, schools that film schools, if you can cotton on and help people early in their careers, you're not going to get paid anything, but you're going to learn and you're going to meet people that are also trying to develop their own career. And if you're really lucky, you'll make a little team and you'll work on small things, independent things. And like Tamara said, the places you can go with this, there's unions in Canada, there's commercials. You can start that way and just to learn and just see how things are shot. You don't, you learn by doing and learn by seeing. So, and you're not going to do or see if you're not there somehow. So, you got to do it yourself, or you have to find some place where you're accessible, you're able to get in, which is a non-union kind of thing. And commercials and music videos is certainly one, or short films is certainly one way to go.
We're over out of time, but do you guys mind hanging around for another few minutes just to finish off these few questions?
Yeah, no, fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
We still have 77 people here. From Louis Garcia again. What was the process like when building the giant gimbal to tilt the ship, time, etc.? I mean, obviously it's a big question, but within a brief answer.
Months. It was months. It was months of planning and engineered drawings, and I can't remember. Andy was the guy. I can't remember Andy's last name. We had one of our special effects team, who was originally from Vancouver, I believe. And he was really masterminding with Brandt and Mark Kudenbauer, the working of the gimbal. And thank God for somebody like Brant Garden from my end, because he really allowed me to focus on the visuals and the design of it, whereas we had to have this massive moving piece. So we built you can see a bit of it in the making of. We built the truss work of the ship first, and then in conjunction, we'd already designed it around this giant gimbal, and then we brought in the gimbal to fit on the port. The starboard side of the boat was all open, and that's where we had access to the gimbal. And it was huge. It was fierce. It was a scary thing, like I was just going up the ship, as Paul knows, it was just really scary. And there's, you're on top of
It was
this
very
ship.
high. It was really big.
It was really
Yeah,
high. Yeah, it was really
yeah.
quite scary, but this gimbal was pretty awesome. Yeah.
Mhm. The months is the
Months,
short answer.
months, and months of planning before anything was even built. Yeah.
Audrey Pinnock, as an aspiring production designer from small town New Brunswick with lots of family in Cape Breton, it is so cool to hear you talk about it. It's a comment rather than maybe you'll
Thank you.
meet Audrey at some point.
I wanted to shoot in Cape Breton so desperately. I wasn't living here full time yet, and I was like, there was a village scene, and there's this fortress of Louisburg here, where I went and scouted and showed Guillermo pictures, and it was amazing research because it's the actual period, and it's like a French fortress. It's built in a European style, but then he cut the village scene. But I also thought the ice coming in here. I mean, there's incredible ice in the winter. Lake Nipissing, where we shot the Arctic scenes, wasn't so bad, but was kind of
Oh,
slushy.
really? That's where you shot them. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump over Louis' next question because it gives someone else a chance. Kim Sue Bartnick asks, Tamara, when you're grounding your design work in reality and historical research, you've kind of answered this. Where is the line in breaking away from fact and interjecting magic or story into that is more fictional? You kind of answered that earlier.
Yeah, it's again, it's like there is no line. It's a gradual fade of like, well, how historically accurate is this? And then dial in the Guillermo factor, and then you get the fantasy, and there you go. It really is. There is no cut line. It's just, how is this going to work? Is this going to be believable? And even if it's not, who cares? It's operatic. That's what we were doing. So.
Exactly. It's very operatic. Okay, Louis has one more question. There's some thank yous and appreciations.
Yeah, I
in the
see
comment.
them. Thank you guys. I like whoever said go to the movie theater. Yeah, there
right,
you go.
Yeah. I'll just
Right on.
Louis P. Garcia has thank you for sharing the conversation today. And what was the biggest risk you took when you started your career as a production designer? Like maybe.
Okay, I'm going to answer this first. Paul and I, a little known fact, we were both art directors on the first X-Men shot in Toronto, and it was by far, I think, for both of us, the biggest thing that we'd ever encountered in terms of a movie, and a huge learning curve for both of us. But I loved art directing, and I think it benefited me coming from, and Paul coming from art direction, and that was actually like felt very risky to move to say no. I won't, because I was doing both little Canadian things and then art directing bigger things. And I just at one point in my career said, okay, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to production design. And that felt very risky and scary. Along with having a family and two young kids. It was, yeah. Paul, what about you?
Well, for me, well, you can probably ask my parents. I mean, I worked. I always wanted to be an architect. I ended up going to school and did quite well at university, and I came out and I worked for a few years as an architect. And then I had met a bunch of people who worked in film, and I was kind of my passion grew. It sounded far more exciting than architecture, so I stopped. I didn't work for architect, and I volunteered in an art department and with Ian Brock actually. And then after 4 days, he said, there's a paid job driving the cube truck for the set deck department. And I was broke at the time, so I did that, and I did that for a while. And of course, I'd be sitting there telling my parents, well, what are you doing? Well, I'm just sitting as a passenger. I wasn't even driving. Sorry, I was actually one of the guys helping load all the furniture on the set deck truck, and I'd be sitting there going, well, I'm just moving furniture at the moment for films. And so, what is that? And they had no, and I said, well, no, I think it's pretty fascinating, and I'm just learning, and I want to see where I want to be, and I think I want to draw. I've now it took me a couple of weeks to figure out that there's people who draw the sets here. That's what I should be doing. But so I knew I had to. I wanted to get there, but of course I didn't have any money, and I wasn't in the DGC, so I had to earn the money while I applied. I did my portfolio and everything, and so I spent 6 months driving the cube truck, and also I eventually became a lead man. These are non-union MOWs, if people remember what those are, movie of the weeks. And and so I remember sitting there doing that. I remember one time pulling up downtown Bay Street. I'm in the passenger seat with my arm out like this, and there's one of my I used to ski race, and one of my ski race team members, she was a lawyer, and she was all in her business suit sitting down there at Bay and Wellington or whatever it was. And she said, Paul? And I'm like, yeah. And there I am. I thought you were an architect. I'm like, well, I've taken a gamble. So there you go. That was my gamble.
I remember way back. Yeah, I don't know if it was union, but you I needed some drafting done on something, And Patty Creech said, "I've got this friend Paul, and I remember you driving your bike over, and you were all this hand drafting."
I think I did 2 weeks, yeah, or something like
Yeah,
that. I forgot what it was for now. Yeah,
There you
exactly.
go.
you were
Yeah,
just this architect guy who was trying to
Well,
break in.
I think Paul, your parents should be okay with it now. I think it worked out.
I think so. Yeah, yeah, they're okay.
Um,
They're okay now. They just said we trust you. You know, we paid all this money to get you there, but we're gonna trust you. And I said, we just have a bit of patience because, like, to everyone out there, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a little time, and you have to just work at it. So
that's true. Yeah. Well, thank you so much today for your great conversation and being here. I know, Tamara, you've been on the junket, for the last several months probably,
Yeah.
and it's very exhausting. But thank you so much
punishing,
for giving your
punishing.
time here today, and you as well, Paul. And thanks again to GGC and to Giacomo, who was our backroom guy, for helping out. And I also want to just remind those DGC members to put in your register for the AGM and put in your proxy if you can attend. The links again were in the question and answers. And yeah, thanks for attending and really your presence and the generosity of people like Paul and Tamara that actually make these all arts possible. And so let's hopefully we'll have another one in a few months. In the meantime, this was recorded, and there'll be a recording up later, I guess in this coming week or the following week, sometime in the coming days, as it said, on the DGC YouTube channel, which again, a link was put into the Q&A, I believe. So thanks for hanging in there and for using this Sunday afternoon to sort of like see such great work. And again,
Thanks, Marion.
congratulations.
Thanks, Marion. Thanks, Marion, for putting it together.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Marion.
Bye,
Bye,
guys.
guys.
Bye, everyone.